Hi, I'm Padma Priya. I'm from Avinashalingam Deemed University, and today we are going to deal about current trends in counseling and e-counseling. So, counseling skills are an integral part of everyday communication, both in a personal and professional context. They are necessary competence for practitioners whether working in a face-to-face context or when conversing in an online environment. In a therapeutic context, they are essential tools required of a professional to facilitate personal growth, personal awareness, and the elevation of the impact of mental health difficulties. There might be circumstances preventing clients in have access to the personal counseling sessions. In such cases, the availability of online support is an invaluable resource. Seeking online support can often be the first step for those lacking in confidence and who have personal barriers in accessing a more traditional entry route to receiving a personal support. It is a direct medium between the counselor and the client. The social taboo, the stigma of mental health, and the reluctance to visit a mental health professional, the use of technology to provide web-based counseling, e-therapy, online counseling, and cyber counseling are excellent opportunities that bridge the gap between the need and the availability of solutions to problems. So now let's discuss on objectives of e-counseling. To understand one's own problem clearly, to realize what he is able to do and what he should do. That means to accept abilities and weakness, decide a course of action by making his own decision, improve personal effectiveness, develop insight and understanding in relation to self and environment, opportunities to improve in respect to his potentials and goals he has chosen. So now let's discuss on current trends in counseling. Telemedicine is becoming more prevalent as technological advancement continues to influence how we deliver services and treat our clients. In increasing numbers and frequency, our clients are emailing and text messaging us, requesting sessions by phone and requesting a therapy that is exclusively delivered via the internet. Some of the most cited concerns in regard to e-therapy and email communications are issues of confidentiality, privacy, informing clients about the vulnerability of email and other web-based communications in regard to privacy so they can make informed consent about treatment, discovering clients' identity, making proper assessment of client suitability for e-therapy, and applications of reporting laws and crisis interventions. Some of the most important, however, unresolved issues are practicing across state lines, Skype compatibility with HIPAA, reimbursement, and treating clients in different countries. Arenas. Arenas also sometimes referred to as arrangements or modalities, may include constellations of people receiving therapy and the media through which therapy is delivered, like telephone, email, counseling, art therapy, dance therapy, and writing therapy, etc. The former group is the one most commonly included under the arena. Strictly speaking, forms of self-help such as self-analysis, therapeutic writing, and meditation might be included here. The interpersonal arenas are all usually face-to-face, verbally meditated therapies. Next, we can discuss on peer counseling. This refers to any kind of counseling or therapy provided on the egalitarian basis, with each party agreeing temporarily to take the role of counselors with the other as client and then reversing roles. Its benefits include mutually egalitarianism, economy, and avoidance of professional intrusions. Its potential problems include boundary issues, compromised ability to hold, and transferential dynamics. And next is the individual therapy. Individual therapy clearly replicates the original relationships of infant, caregiver, and professional relationships such as the doctor-patients. This arena offers optimal confidentiality, privacy, attention, containment, intimacy, and safety. The assumption that it is necessarily the best arena for each client should be balanced by consideration which include the therapist's expertise in various areas, potential for dependency, manipulation, acting out, and abuse. The usefulness of other arenas should always be considered instead of or in conjunction with individual therapy. Counseling therapy via other media. Face-to-face individual therapy based on talking is the most common format. Increasingly, therapy is offered using alternative media and arenas. Child psychotherapy is a special media and arenas. Child psychotherapy is a specialism in its own right requiring particular training. The expensive art therapies, which include art therapy, drama therapy, psychodrama, dance, and movement therapy, therapeutic writing, and use of other media, are increasing in their event, availability, and professionalism. For certain groups, one or the other form of expressive therapy may be the arena or modality of choice. Bodywork may or may not fit here, but obviously is an alternative means of providing therapy. Where there are clearly problems expressed somatically, therapeutic massage, breathing, or other techniques may be considered viable alternatively. Difference between counseling and psychotherapy, and the use of counseling and psychotherapy and the use of counseling skills have already been discussed. Here it is important to point out that people often receive sufficient help from the alternative professionalism or paraprofessionals who may use counseling skills. Social workers, probation officers, guidance workers, welfare officers, nurses, teachers, mentors, coaches, and others often become involved in a helping or therapeutic role, or many have specific training in therapeutic knowledge and skill. It is quite likely that many people are helped by such professionals, either incidentally or by a brief contact or by formal arrangements, who might not otherwise approach, trust, or have access to helpers, designated counselors, or psychotherapists. Voluntary agencies. These include those with national coverage such as Victim Support, Mind Turning Point, etc. Provision of local women's therapy centers, rape crisis centers, HIV or AIDS agencies, and family-oriented drug and alcohol-related services is widespread. Many of these rely on a mixture of statutory funding. Voluntary fundraising and donations. Most concentrate on a specific client group, and some may offer paid positions. The work is not always purely and solely counseling or psychotherapy, but may include telephone helplines, befriending, advocacy, informations, and advice giving and awareness raising, and so on. Residential care. Residential care projects may be based within the statutory or voluntary services and obviously focus on clients whose need involves more than talking therapy. Clients groups include children at risk, vulnerable young people, the homeless, those with often multiple problems of poverty, domestic violence, alcohol and drug abuse, criminal behavior, mental health problems, disabilities and special needs, illness and frailty. Quite typically, such work involves degree of physical care, welfare issues and liaison with multiple agencies. Clients are often helped by the key workers, a part of whose work may be able to provide counseling or to refer elsewhere for counseling. Some kinds of intensive residential care are highly specialized, for example, with victims of torture, those emerging from hostage or damaging cult experiences. There are many projects offering residential rehabilitation programs following drug addictions and alcoholism, and which look for experience or qualification in general and psychiatric nursing, social work, counseling and group work. Often this kind of work offers in-house training and may be regarded as a road towards further professional training. Education. School, further and higher education, special educational projects are some of the longest established setting in which forms of counseling and therapy take place. While some schools offer specific counseling services, therapeutic work is probably still more commonly carried out by educational psychologists, behavior support workers, mentors, and by teachers with a pastoral brief, with a referral being made where necessary to child psychotherapist. Colleges of further and higher education and universities, although not providing uniform national therapeutic services for students, are no example of setting in which counseling has been offered successfully for decades. In the transitional and vulnerable period between adolescence and adulthood, issues of career uncertainty, susceptibility to emotional, interpersonal and sexual problems, drugs and alcohol, homesickness and educational pressures require sensitive help. Students' counselor may have relative high caseloads of self-referred clients presenting a wide range of personal concerns. Turnover is often high since the work is often crisis-oriented and determined by the pressures of the academic calendar. Student counselor work in one of the few areas with a relatively good, clear structure of pay, conditions and progression prospects. And the next is workplace. Today, counseling is a regular feature of many diverse workplaces and often a service that most human resource personnel departments are familiar with and have access to, and they will know how to access psychological help for employees. Workplace counseling is usually accessible to employees through employee counseling services or employee assistance programs. Workplace counseling has a regular source of income, and often counselors will be contracted to EAP to provide a short-term work. With more people spending more of their lives in their working environment, some employers have had to adapt to provide what employees need in order to keep them at work. Counseling can keep an employee functioning, on task and as part of the workplace. It can also enable employees to leave abusive working environments or challenging the hostiles and sometimes alien experience of being an employee. Prevention of absenteeism is a motive behind employee counseling service. Employees' concern include drug and alcohol abuse, stress at work, employee relations, management of change, redundancy, accidents in the workplace, etc. Many large companies provide their own in-house counseling provisions, sometimes as part of their occupational health. Some refer out to individual counselors or group practices. Many contract the services of external employee assistance programs providers. Primary health care. Counselors and psychotherapists are also sometimes to be found in specialized roles in hospitals. Example, providing debriefing, counseling after road, traffic accidents, counseling in obstetric, infertility clinics, etc. depending on local policies in NHS settings. E-counseling and electronically delivered therapies. The first aspect of working with text that may seem obvious but bears clarifying is that it is a distant method of communications. There are obvious benefits to those who cannot access therapy, for example because of disability or geographical reasons. But apart from practical reason, it is important to understand the disinhibitions effect that makes for a more open and honest relationship. The ability for the client to reveal much more when working at a certain perceived distance is significant. It also means that the level of disclosure occurs at a much faster pace than it usually does in a fast-paced face-to-face relationship or even within other methods of distance therapy such as telephones. Since 1995, there has been a growing body of individual practitioners, organizations and dedicated service providers who have turned to new methods of communication to deliver counseling and psychotherapy, more desirables from the client and practitioner's point of view, as well as the work of international experts in the field publishing literature and collaborating on research projects. The area of electronically delivered therapy has been addressed by mental health organizations worldwide. Professional bodies such as British Association of Counseling and Psychotherapy, the National Board of Certified Counselor, and the American Counseling Association have addressed and published guidelines for their members who wish to offer an online presence. In addition, a dedicated body for online practitioners, the International Society for Mental Health Online, was formed in 1997 to promote the understanding, use and development of online communication, information and technology for the international mental health community. This section describes the most essential elements that practitioners need to be aware of before considering an online presence from a theoretical stance. It will concentrate on the use of text via mail, email, IRS chat rooms, forums, mobile phone textings or SMS, etc., or conducting an individual client-practitioner therapeutic relationships. Using block text mail for therapy. This is most people's perception of using email for therapeutic use, the exchanging back and forth of emails between two people within a contract, which is short and weekly and which is hopefully utilized encryption software for privacy and confidentiality. Using narrative dynamic email therapy. This type of email is where the practitioners insert his or her responses within the client's email using different fonts or colors. The client reciprocates in the same way and usually for a small number of exchanges before the dynamic text becomes too unwieldy and a new narrative is required. Again, it is short-term, weekly and utilizes encryption software for privacy and confidentiality. Using internet relay chat for therapy. This method involves a dialogue between the client and the practitioners in real time using an internet chat room or an instant message software. The contracted sessions are usually weekly and often incorporated a weekly exchange of asynchronous email. They are also password protected. Using forums for therapy. More secure than any other form of electronic delivered therapy within this context. Forums are held on the internet itself behind a password protected access system so that the client and the therapist visit a website to view and post responses to each other. Using mobile phone texting for therapy. An extremely recent method for therapeutic use, mobile phone texting, is usually reserved for making and cancelling face-to-face appointments. Its uses has, however, been documented as a facility for client to end face-to-face relationship and has follow-up for patients who have been treated for drug and alcohol addictions. The use of texting within therapy is anticipated to become more common in the near future. Ethical consideration for using mobile phones. Confidentiality, data protection, limitations of the method, contracting and informed consent, encryption, fee structure, assessment skills, suitability of the client and referring on verifications of the parties, practitioner competence, boundaries, licensing, regulations and quality control, virus, worm and Trojan management, crisis interventions and societal client, cultural difference and technical breakdown. The world of technological development is one of that most developed extremely quickly, and it is well known that the counseling and psychotherapy profession in particular has been playing catch up with the arrival of technology for therapeutic use over the last 10 years. What is certain, however, is that the profession has had come to terms with the idea that sometimes the client is in a situation that means that they not only cannot sit with a face to face, but also that they don't want to. It is these clients that practitioners can now stop excluding from our services and ensuring that the world of counseling and psychotherapy becomes more accessible to your potential clients worldwide. Telephone counseling. A few counselors had used the telephones for the occasional sessions when a client was unable to attend face-to-face sessions, but conducting all counseling sessions by telephone. Fortunately, those counselors who are willing to explore new concepts and broaden their horizons preserved, and telephone counseling became an accepted mode of counseling. The intensity of interactions, because there is less opportunity for distraction during the session, since both parties are focused on words and voice tone alone, further enhances the development of the relationships. This usually enables a deeper therapeutic relationship to become established sooner than occurs in much face-to-face work. Telephone counseling is an excellent example of an integrative approach to counseling. It can utilize aspects of psychodynamic orientations, person-centered approaches, brief therapeutic interventions, and other humanistic methods of working. Cognitive behavioral techniques may be used alongside interpretative psychotherapeutic disciplines. Telephone counseling is an excellent way of equalizing the power relationship between the counselor and the client. Contracting and ethics. Some of the issues is considered to be the contracting have already been addressed, such as location and time. Terms of reference of both parties outlining the goals and aims of the sessions. The length of each session, which should be fixed at no longer than an hour or no less than 45 minutes. The time interval between the sessions, ideally a week. The number of sessions before a review, or a block of 6 with a review during the 5th is suggested. Further blocks of 4 to 6 sessions can be agreed as desired. The location to ensure privacy and no interruptions. Who calls whom and therefore pays for the cost of the calls. What is considered a late, start, or no show? What happens in these instances? The telephone is an excellent medium for enabling the client to feel free to talk about anything. It is also an excellent way of broadening the counseling horizons, and it is one of the very few counseling techniques that enable an equalizing of power in the client-counselor relationship. Further, it constantly reminds the counselor of the skills of listening and really hearing. Finally, we must consider how all this building of a therapeutic relationship can occur without the gestures, vocal interventions, and eye contact that make up the traditional face-to-face relationship. The quality of the practitioner written communications and their ability to convey the nuances of body language that facilitate the client's growth, empathetical facial gestures, for example, is paramount when working online. However, it should be noted that respect for the client means that their ability to communicate in this way need not be expert. Although the practitioner's work is made much easier if it is, the use of text to replicate body language takes many forms online, as does the use of etiquettes. But both aspects are integral to the success of the communications and therefore the client's recovery.